I parked the truck and turned off the engine, stretching my legs after the long, twisting drive up the mountain. The Forestry Service truck had handled the dirt road better than I expected, but my back was stiff from the 3-hour trip. The lookout tower stood ahead against the clear blue Montana sky, looking like something out of another time. 4 stories of old wood with a glass room at the top. It sat right on the edge of a cliff, watching over miles of forest and mountains. This would be my home for the next 5 months. I grabbed my duffel bag from the seat, stepped out, and took a deep breath. The air smelled like pine and rain. The only sounds were birds and wind moving through the trees. After months of city noise, the silence felt almost strange, like the mountain itself was listening. A second forestry truck was parked nearby. As I got closer to the tower, a man came out to meet me. He walked slowly, the way someone does when they've lived in the wilderness for years. "You must be Jerry Juarez," he said, holding out his hand. "Charles Lewis. Most folks call me Rob." I shook his hand. "Nice to meet you. Everyone calls me Jerry." Rob looked to be in his 50s, his face lined from years in the sun. His uniform was faded and worn, but he carried himself with calm authority. "Let's get you settled in and go over the basics," he said, leading the way up the stairs. "Not a hard job, but there are a few things you'll need to know." The old stairs creaked as we climbed. Inside, the living quarters were small but clean. A kitchen, a bathroom, a bed, and a few pieces of furniture. Big windows looked out across the endless green of the forest. "This is your living area," Rob said. "The observation deck's upstairs. That's where you'll spend most of your time." We went up to the top floor, a glass room with a full 360-degree view. The sight was incredible. Mountains rolling, in every direction, valleys fading into mist. "This is where the magic happens," Rob said with a grin. "Your job's simple. Watch for smoke, report fires, and keep track of lightning during storms. You'll do radio check-ins 3 times a day." He showed me the tools: binoculars, maps, weather gear, the radio. Everything looked straightforward, exactly what they'd covered in training. "Channel 1's for regular reports," he explained. "Channel 2's for emergencies. Channel 3 connects to other towers nearby." I nodded, feeling confident. It was simple work, and that's exactly what I wanted. After years of noisy construction jobs in Boise, I was ready for quiet. "Got it," I said. "Seems simple enough." Rob's face changed. "There's one more thing," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to me. "These are safety rules, specific to this tower." I opened it. 6 rules were typed neatly across the page. As I read them, my confusion grew. 1. Do not answer any radio calls after 9 p.m., no matter who's calling. 2. If you hear footsteps on the stairs after dark, turn on the exterior floodlights immediately. 3. Do not look at the mountains between midnight and 5:41 a.m. 4. If you hear knocking at the door in sets of 3, stay away from doors and windows until morning. 5. Never go outside during thunderstorms, no matter what. 6. If you see someone who looks like me or anyone you know coming toward the tower, hide and don't come out until dawn. I looked up, waiting for him to laugh or say it was some weird joke for the new guy, but his face stayed serious. "You're kidding, right?" I asked. "This is like an initiation thing?" Rob shook his head slowly. "I wish I was kidding, Jerry. Every rule on that list exists for a reason. What reason could there be for not looking at the mountains at night? Isn't literally the job? The job is spotting fires," Rob said quietly. "And you won't see any fires by looking up there after dark." I handed the paper back, half smiling. "Come on, this can't be real." "It's not a joke," he said, pushing it back into my hand. "In the last 10 years, 8 people have worked this tower. 3 quit their first month. 2 left before the season ended. The other 3... He stopped, his eyes fixed on mine. "The other 3 vanished." A chill went through me, cutting right through the warmth of the sun. Vanished? What do you mean? I mean gone, he said flatly. No bags packed, no radio calls, trucks still parked out front, just gone. The ones who made it out, they followed the rules. I stared at him, trying to read his face. He didn't look like a man who joked about things. So, what am I supposed to be afraid of? Bears? Cougars? Rob turned to the window, looking out over the endless forest. I can't tell you exactly what's out there, he said, but these mountains are old, and not everything in them wants us here. I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. What? Forest spirits? Bigfoot? Aliens? Make jokes if you want, Rob said calmly. Just keep that list close. Follow it, especially after dark. He stayed another hour, showing me the supplies, how to log reports, and where everything was stored. All perfectly normal stuff. It made that list feel even stranger, like a bad dream wedged between routine instructions. Before leaving, Rob paused at the door. I'll be back in a week to check on you, he said. Radio if you need anything, during the day. And then he was gone, leaving me standing in the quiet tower with that list still folded in my hand, wondering just what kind of place I'd agreed to watch over. He gave me a hard, meaningful look before leaving. And Jerry, he said quietly, I'm serious about those rules. Your life might depend on them. Then he climbed into his truck and drove away down the dirt road, the sound of the engine fading into the distance until I was alone again. I sat in the observation room with the folded list in my hand, staring at it. Part of me wanted to call the main office and ask if my supervisor was known for pulling pranks on new hires. But another part of me couldn't shake the tone in Rob's voice or the way his eyes had looked at me. In the end, I tacked the paper to the bulletin board like a curiosity, telling myself I'd humor him for now. 5 months of isolation stretched ahead of me. If nothing else, at least I'd have something to laugh about. The first few days were exactly as I expected. I built a routine quickly, waking with the sunrise, making coffee, scanning the endless forest for any sign of smoke, logging it over the radio, reading books, cooking simple meals, and repeating the cycle. The sunsets here were almost unreal, colors spilling across the sky I'd never seen back in the city. By the 4th day, the strange list of rules had faded into the background. Nothing weird had happened. No strange radio calls after dark, no footsteps on the stairs, no strange urges during storms. The isolation I'd been craving was exactly what I got, and I found myself enjoying the quiet. At night, I'd sit on the small deck with a beer, staring at the sky packed with stars, listening to the forest breathe. Sometimes there were owls, sometimes the distant howl of wolves. It was peaceful in a way I didn't know I'd been missing. By the end of the first week, I'd slipped comfortably into the job. The list of rules was still there on the board, but it had become nothing more than a weird little note I barely glanced at anymore. Whatever had spooked the other lookouts before me clearly wasn't anything I needed to worry about. Rob was either testing me, hazing me, or he honestly believed the superstitious nonsense he'd handed me. Either way, as I sat in the observation room on my 7s, the night watching the sun sink behind the mountains, I felt completely at ease in my tower. The rules seemed like nothing but a strange story now, a quirky footnote to an otherwise simple job. I had my feet up on the desk, reading a dog-eared paperback I'd grabbed at a gas station on my way up here. The silence of the tower had become comforting, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wood or the low hum of the fridge in the corner. My flashlight cast a soft pool of light across the book's pages. It was some cheap thriller, nothing special, but it kept me busy. That's when the radio crackled to life with a burst of static that made me jump. "Hello? Is anyone there? Please, I need help." I lowered my book slowly, staring at the radio. The voice sounded young. A man, maybe in his 20s. He sounded scared. "I'm lost near one of the lookout towers," he said. "I think I can see lights. Please, if anyone's there." I glanced at the small digital clock on the desk. 9:47. Rule 1. No radio responses after 9 p.m. I set the book aside and leaned closer to the radio, my hand hovering over the transmit button. The voice came again, even more desperate now. "Please, my legs hurt. I can't make it much farther. I can see your tower lights. Just tell me if I'm going the right way." I bit my lip, my fingers inches from the button. What kind of person ignores someone in trouble? Rob's warning seemed absurd compared to a real person crying for help. These rules were probably some old scare tactic for rookies. A hazing ritual. "It's getting darker," the voice said. "I think I hear something moving in the trees. Please answer me." My hand fell back. Rob's words about the missing lookouts came to me, sharp and sudden. 3 had disappeared. The ones who followed the rules survived. But the voice on the radio sounded so real, so full of pain and panic. "I'm begging you," it said. "Just say something so I know which direction to go." I sat there frozen, listening to the voice plead. Minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. The voice grew more frantic, describing something moving in the woods, begging me to send help, to say anything at all. "Please," it said. "I think something's following me now. I can hear it." My stomach twisted. What if it was real? What if someone was hurt out there and I was letting them die because of a stupid list of rules? "Oh God, it's getting closer," the voice sobbed. "Please help me." My knuckles turned white on the edge of the desk as I forced myself to stay put. After about 20 minutes, the voice went silent. The radio hissed softly with static, but no words came through. I waited for more, but nothing. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice again. Imagined some injured hiker being dragged into the dark woods while I sat safe in my tower. I'd chosen the rules over a life. The guilt gnawed at me until dawn. When morning came, I stumbled out of bed and went straight to the radio, ready to call in a report, start a search. Something. That's when I noticed it. The power cord for the radio was dangling loose from the back of the unit, completely unplugged. I stared at it, unable to process what I was seeing. I had used the radio for my evening check-in. I hadn't touched it since. The radio had been unplugged all night. Whatever I'd heard begging for help hadn't come through the radio at all. My hands trembled as I plugged it back in. The familiar green light came on. I picked up the handset and made my morning report, keeping my voice steady as I relayed fire conditions and weather updates. I said nothing about the night before. When I was done, I pulled the rule list from the drawer where I'd stuffed it and read each item carefully. This time, I didn't laugh. I set the paper on my desk and weighed it down with my coffee mug, keeping it where I could see it. For the next 2 days, I followed every rule exactly. I made my reports on time, never touched the radio after 9, never looked out at the mountains when I wasn't supposed to. I jumped at every sound, double-checked the floodlights again and again. On the second night, I tried to read again, but couldn't focus on the words. Around 11:30, I heard it. Heavy footsteps on the wooden stairs outside. Thump, thump, thump. Slow, deliberate steps coming up toward the cabin. My heart hammered as I scrambled to the light panel. Rule 2. Turn on the exterior floodlights if you hear footsteps on the stairs after dark. I slapped the switch, flooding the area around the tower with harsh white light. The footsteps stopped right away. For a few long seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then, they started again, slower this time, moving downward, as if whatever was coming up had turned around. I stood frozen by the control panel, my breath coming in short, shaky gasps. I didn't move, didn't even blink, afraid that if I did, the thing would come back. I kept every floodlight burning until the first trace of dawn touched the horizon. I couldn't turn them off. I was too scared to imagine what might have happened if I hadn't remembered the rule. By the next evening, I was exhausted but trying to stay alert. After my nightly radio check-in, I followed my usual routine, reading, writing notes in my journal, and glancing out at the tree line from habit. The clock showed almost midnight. My coffee had gone cold, so I stood to make a new cup. While waiting for the kettle to boil, I leaned against the counter, staring lazily out the window. That's when I noticed the mountains. At first, they looked normal, dark silhouettes against the sky, but something felt off. The shapes seemed to move. I blinked hard, thinking it was my tired eyes playing tricks on me, but then I saw it clearly. The peaks were shifting, bending like soft fabric caught in a wind that didn't exist. My stomach dropped. The solid rock looked like it was rippling, alive. One peak stretched, upward, twisting and reshaping itself into something new. I checked the time, midnight exactly. Rule 3 flashed through my head. Do not look at the mountains between midnight and 5 a.m. I should have turned away immediately, but I didn't. Something about it drew me closer, like a hand pulling me in. The more I stared, the more beautiful it looked. Impossible, yet mesmerizing. My hand lifted toward the glass on its own. Then pain shot through my head, sharp and cold, like an ice pick behind my eyes. I stumbled backward, gasping. The kettle's whistle made me jump. I turned it off but didn't pour the water. My hands were trembling too much. I needed to follow the rules. Exactly. I moved my chair to face the inner wall, turning my back to every window. Still, I could feel it. The mountains calling me, whispering for me to look again. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was like something alive wanted my attention. No, I muttered to the empty room. Not this time. I tried reading to distract myself, but the words blurred. Every few minutes, I caught myself starting to turn my head toward the window. I clenched my fists and forced myself to stay still. The compulsion grew stronger with each passing minute. My neck ached from fighting the urge to look. Finally, I went to the bathroom, the farthest point from any window, and sat on the floor, counting seconds. When the first hint of dawn finally came, I felt it before I saw it. A soft lifting, like the air itself had released me. I glanced at my watch. 5:07 a.m. Only then did I turn around. The mountains stood still again, perfectly ordinary. No movement, no distortion. But I couldn't forget what I'd seen. I wrote a note and taped it to the window. Rule 3 is real. Never look at night. Almost a week went by without anything strange happening. I kept to the rules like my life depended on it. The footsteps, the radio voice, they were terrifying, but what I'd seen with the mountains haunted me more. It was like something had looked back at me that night. One evening, while washing dishes, I heard a knock. 3 sharp raps, evenly spaced. I froze. Then another set of 3. Then another. Rule 4 hit me like lightning. Stay away from doors and windows if you hear 3 knock patterns. I shut off the water and backed away, heart pounding. The knocks kept coming, patient and steady, never changing rhythm. I wanted to yell out, to ask who it was, but my gut screamed not to. I stepped back to the center of the room and sat on the edge of the cot. The knocking didn't stop. 20 minutes, 30, 45. The rhythm never changed, perfectly timed like a clock. My mind started playing tricks. Maybe it was a branch, maybe the wind, but the air was still outside. No breeze. The forest was silent except for those perfect, even knocks. My palms ached from clenching my fists so hard. Then, as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. The silence afterward was worse, heavy and sharp, pressing in from every direction. I stayed where I was, not daring to move until dawn broke. When daylight finally came, I went to the door, every nerve in my body tense. At first, nothing seemed different. Then I saw them. 3 long gouges across the wooden door, deep enough to fit my finger inside. My stomach turned. Those marks hadn't been there before. Something had been knocking, and it definitely wasn't using knuckles. I took pictures, then reinforced the lock with whatever I could find. It wouldn't stop much, but it gave me some comfort. Days later, a thunderstorm rolled in. I'd seen it forming on the radar and secured everything. The rain came first, pounding against the glass. Lightning flashed, turning the forest white for a second. That's when I saw movement between the trees. Something big, gone as quickly as it appeared. Then came the thunder, shaking the tower, and underneath it, a sound. Low, soft, almost like singing. A slow humming melody that rose, see, and fell with the wind. It was beautiful, and it was calling me. I felt it deep in my chest. A powerful need to step outside, to follow that sound into the rain. My body moved before my thoughts could stop it. I was halfway to the door when Rule 5 burned through my mind. Never go outside during thunderstorms. My hand hovered over the doorknob. "No," I hissed through gritted teeth. "You're not real." But the humming grew louder, more desperate, as if begging me to open the door. My fingers touched the cold metal. Forcing every ounce of will I had, I pulled my hand back and stumbled away. The melody wrapped around me, vibrating through my bones. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just noise. It was inside me. I started reciting the rules over and over, my voice shaking, anything to block out the pull. The storm raged all night. So did the thing in my head, whispering for me to come outside. When the sun finally rose, it was like waking from a nightmare. The humming stopped. The forest looked normal again. I stepped onto the deck to check for damage, and froze. Huge claw marks ran up the side of the tower, deep and jagged, cutting through the wood like butter. Something massive had tried to climb up to reach me. My stomach twisted as I traced one of the gouges with my hand, each one wider than my palm. Whatever had been calling me last night hadn't wanted to talk. If I'd opened that door, I wouldn't be here to write this. I ran my fingers along the torn wood once more, then went inside and locked the door tight. I sat at the desk, staring at the rule sheet taped to the wall. My eyes blurred from exhaustion. Before I knew it, I'd fallen asleep right there, head on my arms, waiting for whatever came next. The logbook lay open beneath my cheek, a small patch of drool soaking one corner of the page. The lamp cast a weak yellow glow that barely reached the walls of the tower cabin. I rubbed my eyes and checked my watch. Just past 1 o'clock a.m. A sound from below made me freeze, the sharp metallic click of the tower door latch opening. My heart jumped into my throat. Nobody was supposed to come at this hour, not without calling first. Footsteps began climbing the stairs, slow, steady steps echoing through the wood, each one sending tiny vibrations up through the floorboards. Getting closer. Rule 6 flashed in my mind. Hide from unannounced Forest Service employee visits until daylight. I moved quickly but quietly, crossing the room in 3 steps to the supply closet. I slipped inside between cleaning supplies, emergency gear, and extra blankets, pulling the slatted door closed just as the footsteps reached the top landing. The main door swung open. Through the thin gaps of the closet door, I saw a figure step inside. It was Rob, or at least it looked like him. Same worn face, same uniform, same height and build. But something about it was wrong. The way this Rob moved was off. Too smooth, too continuous, like someone had erased all the little natural pauses that come with human movement. His head turned in a single unbroken sweep as he scanned the room. When his flashlight beam crossed the closet, I caught a glimpse of his eyes. They flashed with a greenish-yellow glow, like an animal at night, not human. I pressed myself back into the closet, forcing myself to breathe quietly as the thing that wasn't Rob began moving around the cabin. It checked under the desk, behind the radio equipment, even inside the bathroom. Each action was precise, practiced, but not quite right, like it was copying motions it had seen but never understood. The fake Rob paused at my logbook, running its fingers over the damp spot where I'd been drooling. It lifted its hand, tilting its head too smoothly as it examined the moisture. Then it turned toward the closet, held my breath as it approached, its strange glowing eyes sweeping side to side. It stopped directly in front of me, so close I could smell something odd, wet leaves and copper, not Rob's usual coffee and pine scent. The creature stood still for what felt like minutes, its face inches from the slats. My legs cramped painfully as I crouched among the supplies. Finally, it turned away, drifting to the windows where it stared out at the dark mountains for a long time. Then, without a sound, it walked back to the door, opened it, and left. I listened as those same measured footsteps descended the stairs, followed by the click of the tower door closing. I stayed in the closet until the first pale light of dawn crept through the windows. My whole body ached from holding still so long, but fear kept me frozen. Even after sunrise, I emerged slowly, checking every corner before I accepted I was alone. Hours later, I heard a vehicle approaching. I grabbed my binoculars and confirmed it was the real Forest Service truck, Rob's truck, climbing the access road for our scheduled weekly check-in. When he entered, I must have looked awful. Rob frowned the moment he saw me. "Something happened," he said. It wasn't a question. I told him everything. The midnight visitor, the two smooth movements, the glowing eyes, how it looked just like him, but moved all wrong. Rob listened, his expression grim but not surprised. "There's something in the forest that can take shapes," he said, sitting heavily at the table. "Human shapes. We don't know what it is, but it's been here longer than the tower, longer than the Forest Service." "It looked exactly like you," I whispered. "That's why Rule 6 exists. They can copy appearances, but they can't mimic human behavior perfectly, and they can't stand daylight." Rob rubbed his face. "Marcus, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted out. Nobody would. You've seen more in a few weeks than most lookouts ever do. I can have someone replace you tomorrow." He looked at me, waiting. "You don't have to decide right now," he added softly. "But after seeing that thing, most people choose to leave." The clipboard with transfer papers sat between us. I stared at it. "I'm staying," I said. Rob's eyebrows rose slightly. "You sure after last night?" "Yeah." I rubbed my eyes, still tired from the closet. "When you first told me about the rules, I thought it was some hazing ritual, but every one of them has saved my life." I pulled the folded paper from my pocket, smoothing the soft creased sheet on my knee. The radio that shouldn't work, the footsteps, the moving mountains. I swallowed hard, remembering how they seemed to reach for me. The knocking, the storm, and now that thing pretending to be you. Every rule kept me alive. Rob nodded slowly, a flicker of respect on his face. "Most people don't figure that out until it's too late. They think the rules are suggestions. They're not." He leaned forward. "Strict rule following is the only way to stay alive up here. No exceptions, no matter what you see or hear." "I get it now," I said, folding the paper back into my pocket. Rob stood and picked up his clipboard. "I'll come back in 2 weeks with the supply truck. Call if you need anything before then. During daylight only." After he left, I spent the day scanning the horizon, recording weather data, watching for smoke. The routine felt almost comforting after the previous night's terror. But when darkness fell, I locked the door, closed the blinds, and tried to read, though my eyes kept drifting to the windows. The first footsteps came just after midnight, not like before. This time there were several sets circling the tower, some light and quick, others heavy and dragging. They moved around and around, never in sync, like multiple creatures patrolling. I moved to the switch and flipped on the exterior floodlights. Rule 2 had worked before. The footsteps paused briefly, then continued. My stomach dropped. This was new. They should have retreated like last time. The radio on my desk clicked on by itself. Static hissed, then a voice cut through. My mother's voice. "Marcus, honey, can you hear me? I need help. Please come outside." I froze. My mother lived 2 states away. She didn't even know where I was. Then the voice changed. My brother Tom. "Marcus, what the hell? Turn off the lights, man. You're making it angry." Then my college roommate. My ex. People I hadn't spoken to in years. Finally, Rob's voice came through, perfectly clear. "Marcus, this is Rob. Emergency. Turn off the lights and open the door immediately. That's an order." I backed away from the radio, which shouldn't even work at this hour. Rule 1. No radio responses after 9 p.m. 3 sharp knocks hit the main door. Then the back door. Then every door and window at once. The same 3-knock pattern echoing from all sides. I moved to the center of the room, following Rule 4. Stay away from doors and windows when you hear the knock pattern. My hands shook as the knocking grew louder, a coordinated assault of sound. The voices overlapped, pleading, threatening, begging me to open the door or turn off the lights. I sat on the floor, back against the bed frame, and waited. Hours passed. The voices became more desperate, the knocking more violent. Around 3 a.m., something massive slammed into the tower's side. The whole structure shuddered, books tumbling from shelves, my coffee mug sliding off the desk and shattering. Another impact hit the opposite side, making the tower sway as if it might topple. Against my better judgment, I glanced toward the windows. Through the gaps in the blinds, I saw movement among the trees, massive shadows gliding between trunks, too big for bears, too fluid for anything natural. One shadow rose up, stretching impossibly tall against the sky. The impacts kept coming, the tower groaning under each blow. I stayed put, clutching the rules in my pocket, eyes fixed on the center of the room, not the windows, not the doors. Just breathe and wait. The radio voices turned garbled, inhuman sounds replacing familiar tones. The knocking broke into strange, alien rhythms, no longer pretending to be human. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I didn't look. When the first gray light of dawn touched the sky, everything stopped at once. The knocking cut off mid-pattern. The radio clicked silent. The footsteps vanished. The impacts against the tower stopped. Silence fell so completely, it felt like the night's horrors might have been just a dream. I spent the rest of the fire season following every rule like my life depended on it. After that close call with the pounding and voices, I took no chances. Each evening before sunset, I double-checked every window, making sure the blinds were tightly shut from midnight to 5 a.m. I kept the rules sheet on my desk, never tucked away again. I'd memorized every line until it became second nature. The routine started to feel almost comforting in its predictability. Morning coffee, scanning the horizon, recording weather data, and radio check-ins at exactly 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Never later. Never after 9 p.m., no matter who or what came through the radio. I learned to ignore the small things, the light scratching at the door, faint whispers drifting through the windows, and the strange, stretched shadows that seemed to reach for the tower at sunset. When footsteps came at night, and they always did, I hit the floodlight switch instantly. Sometimes the footsteps stopped right away. Other times they circled for hours, testing my patience and nerve. I stayed still, back to the bed frame, centered in the room, and waited for morning. I never looked toward the mountains after dark. I never stepped outside during storms. I hid in the closet any time I heard unexpected footsteps or voices on the stairs. By late August, the incidents became constant. What started as rare, strange noises turned into near-nightly attacks. The knocking came more often, always in sets of 3, sometimes lasting for hours. The radio would come alive with voices I knew. My mother, old friends, co-workers, all asking for help, all after 9 p.m. I learned to turn the volume down but never off, just in case a real call came through during daylight. When October came, the first snow dusted the mountaintops white. The air turned sharp and cold, and I buried myself under layers of blankets each night. The visits lessened with the cold, as if whatever haunted these woods preferred warmer nights. My twice-daily radio reports became mechanical. Tower 7, all clear, no smoke. The replies were brief acknowledgments, no small talk, no comfort, just silence afterward. By late October, most trees had lost their leaves, leaving the forest bare and exposed. The air felt thinner, quieter. The supply truck stopped coming as often, and I rationed my food carefully, knowing the tower would shut down soon for winter. When I finally saw Rob's Blue Forest Service truck winding up the road one bright November morning, I knew the season had ended. I packed my things neatly into a duffel bag and took one last look around the tower, making sure everything was where it should be. The rules sheet stayed on the desk. I didn't need it anymore. I carried those words in my head now, burned there forever. Rob climbed the metal stairs with that slow, steady walk I'd come to recognize instantly. His knock came as 4 quick raps, not the measured 3 that sent chills through me. I opened the door. He was bundled in a thick coat, breath clute, ding in the cold air. "Jerry," he said with a grin, "you made it." "Whole season," I said, stepping aside.